A burst of electromagnetic radiation from the sun might have the power to trigger huge earthquakes.
What happens is the electromagnetism is conducted by metal in the crust, and sucking in the energy destabilizes the crust.
If it's true, a solar attack around 2012 could jumpstart quakes worldwide wherever fault lines contain a lot of metal.
This brand new flux of magnetic radiation might actually just be enough to nudge the balance of forces holding those plates in place. And suddenly you might then get a magnetically induced earthquake.
We've seen the carnage earthquakes can cause time and time again, so you may want to get all of your sightseeing in now. If large enough fault lines start shifting, our biggest cities could quickly be reduced to heaps of twisted metal.
The ground underneath them might suddenly seem to liquefy, and entire buildings would zigzag across the street and then collapse. The people who are living in there would suddenly find themselves surrounded by falling brick and mortar, the ground constantly shifting beneath their feet.
But even if you somehow escape the carnage of quakes, the Earth still won't be through dishing out the punishment. Massive earthquakes could just be the trigger for the next wave of the apocalypse.
Earthquakes aren't a danger only when they happen right underneath your feet. Some of the most devastating seismic events have been ones that happen deep out at sea under the ocean floor.
In northern Sumatra, 2004, one of the largest earthquakes ever measured struck off the coast. More than 227,000 people died. But it wasn't the earthquake itself that killed so many. It was the massive tsunami triggered by this underwater quake.
Tsunamis are among the most destructive forces known to man. The sudden shift in the ocean sea floor may be such that the ocean floor rises, maybe just a little bit, maybe just an inch or two. But in the process, it's displacing an enormous amount of water.
But don't cancel your cruise just yet. If a tsunami strikes, you'd actually be safer out at sea. It's not until the colossal mass of water approaches shore, where the ocean becomes shallower, that the wave suddenly rises up.
And it starts to pull water away from the coastline and form itself into a gigantic, devastatingly strong wave. So imagine one day you're sitting on the beach, enjoying yourself, clear sky, having a perfectly good time, and you look down toward the shore and you suddenly notice that the ocean is receding fast, faster maybe than you could run, going way back out, miles and miles and miles. If you saw that, well, that will probably be one of the very last things you will ever see, because that means that a tsunami is coming in.
If 2012 brings more and more earthquakes, they're sure to cause more and more tsunamis.
Say if a fault in the center of the Pacific suddenly shifts, cities could be underwater in a second. Say if the fault suddenly shifts in the center of the Atlantic Ocean, the whole east side of the United States is going to be open to a tsunami.
And quakes aren't the Earth's only tsunami factories. Volcanic eruptions at sea can also set off these deadly waves. And some scientists believe one potential killer is lurking in the Atlantic Ocean on the Canary Islands off Africa. An active volcano called Cumbre Vieja. If it blows, scientists don't think it's the lava you should worry about.
If Cumbre Vieja should suddenly erupt, most geologists think there's a very good chance half of that volcanic mountain will slide down into the sea.
The massive landslide would cause a dome of water close to 3,000 feet high and several miles wide to rise up and then collapse. The result would be a mega tsunami, a wave higher than any in recorded history, traveling close to 500 miles per hour.
We're talking about a mega tidal wave, something that would be hundreds and hundreds of feet high. So if something like that were to travel from the Atlantic and head towards the east coast of the United States, head towards Europe, then miles and miles of shoreline would be completely inundated with water.
The carnage worldwide could be unimaginable. Roughly 40% of the world's population lives within a few dozen miles of a coastline.
Our cities would be like sandcastles along a beach shore, and suddenly waves just coming in, crashing down and destroying them completely. And when it went back out, it would pull out everything that was in its path. Cities would not be flooded, cities would be flattened.
As catastrophic as an eruption of Cumbre Vieja could be, you should count yourself lucky if that's the only hotspot that goes off.
Ordinary volcanoes, such as Mount St. Helens, we know can be tremendously destructive all on their own. But ordinary volcanoes are a pale shadow of the phenomenon called supervolcanoes.
If one of these behemoths blows, you might wish for a tsunami to come and wash the fire.